dear?
I'm a little nervous. I have to tell you, it's so funny. My hand was shaking back there. And how's wedding planning? Is it fun? So you asked.
Lauren Sánchez is done.
Not every billionaire's love story begins with whispered betrayals, bitter exes, and accusations that refuse to die. But Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez's does. Behind the flashy engagement ring and luxurious yacht parties lies a tangled web of former lovers, broken trust, and secrets that some exes are still holding on to. One of them even warned Bezos to call him, and not out of kindness. So what are they hiding? And who exactly is the woman that captured the heart of the world's richest man? Before the yachts, the private jets, and the front-page headlines about affairs and diamond rings, Lauren Sánchez was building her career as a TV anchor.
This is what we've learned.
She's one of Extras' esteemed alumni.
It's kind of interesting being on this side of the questions instead of the one
Quietly building a life with one of the NFL's greatest. In the year 2000, long before Jeff Bezos ever entered the picture, Sanchez was in a relationship with Kansas City Chiefs legend Tony Gonzalez. She was sharp, ambitious, and commanding attention on screen. He was at the peak of his football career. Together, they made sense, at least for a while. By 2001, they welcomed their son, Nico. But their romance didn't survive the long haul. While most celebrity relationships end in tabloid-fueled chaos or bitter custody battles, Sanchez and Gonzalez chose a different path. One that still surprises people today. They didn't just co-parent, they became friends, actual friends, and not the kind of we're civil for the cameras friends. Sanchez is now so close to Gonzalez and his current wife, October Toby Gonzalez, that they spend holidays together. Yes, you heard that right. She doesn't just get along with her ex, she gets along with his wife too. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Sanchez admitted, "There was friction at the beginning, but Tony and Toby were at Thanksgiving with us this year, and we're really good friends." That's not normal, that's rare. It's not just her version of events either. Tony himself has gone on record with nothing but praise. When asked about her relationship with Bezos during a 2019 interview with Billy Bush on Extra.
Obviously they are together, and I'm happy for them. I stay out of their personal lives, but it's been great.
Tony didn't flinch. He didn't throw shade. He didn't hint at regret. He simply said, "I'm happy for them. I stay out of their personal lives, but it's been great." He even called co-parenting with Lauren and Bezos great, adding that while he's sad to see Nico go off to college, they've all shared the journey together. In an age where broken relationships often turn toxic, this one evolved into something surprisingly wholesome. When Nico graduated, Lauren, Tony, Toby, and Bezos were all there. Not awkwardly at opposite ends of the stadium, but side by side.
But it's been great.
How's the co-parenting?
It's great. I mean, Lauren, obviously we share Nico. Going to college next year, I'm going to miss him.
Your podcast.
Proud, smiling, united. For a woman constantly in the spotlight, Sanchez's relationship with Tony Gonzalez remains one of the few untouched by scandal or resentment. But what makes this bond even more fascinating is the contrast it creates with what's coming next. Because while Tony may have found peace, the next man in Sanchez's timeline has not. And he didn't just hint at betrayal. It wasn't kind. Long before the billionaire romance and lifestyle headlines, Lauren Sánchez had already built a reputation, not just for her career, but for turning heads wherever she went. And one man who remembers her vividly is retired NFL wide receiver Anthony Miller.
Jersey and say, we got a one of a kind. This is his Pro Bowl jersey, sign and whatever.
Right.
But unlike Tony Gonzalez, Anthony didn't walk away with warm memories. What he walked away with was bitterness, and a story he still insists the world needs to hear. Their relationship began back in 1996, when Sanchez was a young, ambitious reporter just starting to make waves. She was working for KTV in Arizona, covering the Super Bowl. Miller, then playing for the Denver Broncos, was already a name in football circles. Sparks flew quickly. She was a beautiful lady, Miller later recalled. A lot of guys kept hitting on her. But he was the one who caught her attention. Or so he thought. The two would go on to date for 4 years, and by the end of their relationship,
eventually turned sour, as Miller explained. She was a good person to have around when she was with you, if you needed a massage or something to eat or anything.
They were briefly engaged. On paper, it looked like a promising love story. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. And Miller wasn't shy about telling the press exactly why. In a 2019 interview with the Daily Mail, Miller leveled explosive accusations against Sanchez. She was a good person to have around when she was with you, he said. But if she was away from you, no, I didn't trust her. Then came the line that made headlines. She gets around. She was cheating on me with other guys. Miller painted a picture of a woman he couldn't rely on, claiming he was the one being faithful, and that the engagement wasn't something he was eager about.
Also denied claims that he was the one who cheated on her, while also calling her cheap and implying that he was pressured into their engagement.
He implied he was pressured into it. She was cheap, he added, using words that quickly reignited public debate about whether he was speaking the truth or simply bitter. But it didn't end there. In a cryptic twist, Miller told reporters he wished to have a private conversation with Jeff Bezos. I won't tell you what I'm going to say, but he should call me, he said. The statement raised eyebrows everywhere.
From his wife of 25 years,
Threat,
Mackenzie Scott.
a desperate
Lauren
reach for
was
relevance.
also divorcing her husband
No one
of
knows for
13
sure.
years.
Yeah, and Miller never elaborated. But the implication was clear. He believed Bezos needed to know something about Sanchez. The story might have faded into tabloid archives if it weren't for the timing. Miller gave that interview right as the Bezos-Sanchez affair was making global headlines.
Miller did, however, wish to have a few private words with Jeff Bezos, as he added, I won't tell you what I'm going to say, but he should call me.
It felt calculated, strategic, like someone trying to rewrite their chapter in someone else's success story. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is undeniable. Miller's version of events stands in stark contrast to the polished image Sanchez and Bezos now present, and the fact that he still harbored enough resentment to speak publicly nearly 20 years later. That says something. But not all of Sanchez's breakups ended in anger. One dissolved in silence and left a trail of quiet devastation. By the time Lauren Sanchez's name became entangled with Jeff Bezos, she was no stranger to the spotlight. But the man she left behind wasn't just any ex. Patrick Whitesell was a Hollywood powerhouse.
Be out and about a lot, and he was never with her. Another source insisted that they'd already separated by the time that Sanchez got involved with Bezos.
As a top executive at WME, one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, he wasn't just connected. He was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. And for over a decade, he and Sanchez seemed like the perfect industry couple. Polished, powerful, and deeply rooted in elite circles. They met in the early 2000s and married in 2005. Over the next 13 years, they built what outsiders saw as a glamorous, stable family life. They had 2 children together. She attended red carpets by his side, and he helped navigate the careers of Hollywood A-listers. But as the years went on, cracks started to form, quietly at first.
Well aware of the situation, but according to Us Weekly, Whitesell was totally blindsided by the affair, which had reportedly been going on for several.
According to those close to them, their marriage had begun to shift. One insider described it bluntly to People magazine. Over the last 2 or 3 years, their marriage felt more like a business relationship. They both were doing their own thing. Sanchez was often seen out and about, rubbing shoulders with celebrities, while Whitesell was rarely by her side. Still, no one expected the split to unfold the way it did. In early 2019, everything exploded. The world wasn't just learning that Jeff Bezos, still married to philanthropist Mackenzie Scott, had a mistress. They were learning that mistress was Lauren Sánchez. Texts, photos, secret getaways. It was everywhere. And at the center of it all was a man who had no idea his life was about to implode. Patrick Whitesell.
Bezos was still married to Mackenzie Scott. While it's true that Sanchez and Whitesell had been going through a rough patch, insiders claim that he hadn't given up on
Some
their
reports claimed Whitesell already knew that he and Sanchez had quietly separated and were co-parenting peacefully. Others painted a far more brutal picture of a man totally blindsided by betrayal. According to Us Weekly, Sanchez and Bezos had allegedly been seeing each other for several months before the affair became public. He was totally blindsided, one insider said. He hadn't given up on the relationship. There was still hope. What made it worse? Bezos was someone Whitesell knew. Not only was he a public figure, he was part of their social circle. The affair didn't just break a marriage, it created a ripple effect of awkward silence across Hollywood's inner circles.
Getting $35.6 billion in Amazon stock, making her the third richest woman in the world.
But despite the whirlwind of tabloid chaos, something unexpected happened. Whitesell refused to play the bitter ex. There were no interviews, no tell-all memoirs, no cryptic warnings like Anthony Miller. Instead, he took the high road, and when he did, he leveled up. Not long after finalizing the divorce, Whitesell began dating Australian-Chilean model and actress Pia Miller. In 2021, the two quietly tied the knot in an ultra-private ceremony away from the flashing lights. Pat's having the last laugh, one friend told the Daily Mail. He's living the dream with Pia, and he knows it. I doubt he even thinks about Lauren or Jeff anymore. Still, for all the composed headlines and public silence, one thing is certain.
Good. How's the new girlfriend?
That's my wife, actually.
Oh, your wife?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, Patrick. Always good to see you, Patrick.
Whitesell never saw it coming. And while he may have walked away with dignity, the emotional wreckage of a 13-year marriage dissolved under global scrutiny. But the whispers didn't end there. Because when you trace the timelines and compare the stories, something doesn't quite add up, and it all leads to one question no one dares ask out loud. For years, Lauren Sánchez has been photographed on red carpets, praised by billionaires, and flanked by some of the world's most powerful men. But beneath the glamour lies a question few dare to ask. Is there a pattern? And if so, what does it reveal? Because when you start lining up the stories, not just the timelines, but the tone, things begin to shift. Anthony Miller's accusations may have sounded like the rantings of a bitter ex, but his claims weren't isolated. Words like unfaithful, pressured, and manipulative echoed in his interviews. He wasn't just hurt, he was trying to sound the alarm. Then there's the Bezos affair. Though some sources insisted Sanchez and Whitesell had already separated before she got involved with Bezos, others told a different story, one that included secret rendezvous, private jet meetups, and months of concealed intimacy. For a woman deeply embedded in the Hollywood ecosystem, keeping secrets wasn't difficult. But once they unraveled, they did so fast and loud. Suddenly, headlines weren't just calling her Bezos' new flame. They were calling her the reason behind 2 broken marriages. And while Bezos defended her fiercely, the public perception was far less forgiving.
Featuring the image, welcome to the 80s, when big hair and conspicuous consumption ruled. Apparently, tacky is back.
She was labeled everything from homewrecker to social climber. The media dissected every dress, every Instagram post, every look she gave Bezos in public, not with admiration, but with suspicion. The most haunting part? The silence. Sanchez has rarely spoken directly about the timeline of events. No interviews confronting the affair head-on, no statements clarifying the rumors. That silence, for many, says everything. And in a world obsessed with image control, the choice to let the speculation swirl might not be accidental. It might be strategic. Then there's the bigger picture, Each of her high-profile relationships, like from Miller to Gonzalez, Whitesell to Bezos, have something in common: influence.
British royal, blowing the kisses, and they had the ship, their yacht, which has its own yacht, carting.
They were athletes, agents, moguls, billionaires, men with reach, power, and visibility. Critics argue that Sanchez has a history of aligning herself with men who could elevate her profile, socially or professionally. They whisper about motives, hidden agendas, and whether love was ever the real story. Of course, those closest to Sanchez tell a different tale. One of a woman who's fiercely loyal, emotionally intelligent, and deeply generous. Someone who remembers birthdays, throws elaborate family dinners, and fights for her loved ones behind the scenes. So who's telling the truth? Maybe both sides are, because image is everything in her world, and Lauren Sánchez has...
How's wedding planning? Is it fun? So you asked.
Lauren Sánchez is done making
one that's nearly bulletproof. But behind the diamonds and headlines, the doubts remain. And with every past relationship adding another layer to the mystery, one question lingers. Is Lauren just misunderstood? Or is there something she's been very carefully hiding all along? And while the world speculates, one man has made it his mission to protect her public image. And that man happens to be the richest on earth. When the world started whispering about Lauren Sánchez, about affairs, ambition, and accusations, one man stood firmly in her corner: Jeff Bezos. Not just with quiet support behind closed doors, but in bold public declarations that left no room for doubt.
Married, life is just beginning. It is just beginning.
You are preaching to the choir here. We love you. That's amazing.
While former partners aired grievances and tabloids chased rumors, Bezos painted a very different picture. One of love, loyalty, and admiration so unwavering, it almost felt like a strategic counterweight to the chaos. In 2023, during the couple's first sit-down interview together, Bezos didn't just share his side of the story, he rewrote the narrative entirely. Speaking to CNN's Chloe Mellis, the Amazon founder looked genuinely smitten, almost disarmed as he described his fiancée. Lauren is the most generous, most big-hearted person that you would ever meet, he said, his voice soft but deliberate. She is an inspiration in that way, at every level.
Emmy Award-winning journalist and philanthropist Lauren Sánchez is adding author to her impressive list of accomplishments.
This wasn't the soundbite of a man caught up in infatuation. It was a statement of character, and a carefully delivered one. Bezos went on to explain that Sanchez doesn't just care about the people closest to her. She goes out of her way to make everyone feel seen. She never misses a birthday, he said. The network of people she gives birthday presents to is just gigantic. It was a detail so oddly specific, so human, it felt like a subtle rebuttal to every claim that she was calculating or self-serving. No one who keeps a birthday calendar that detailed, Bezos seemed to suggest, could possibly be the cold social climbing.
Go down as yourself, you're going to beat yourself up twice. Good advice, yeah. And it was incredible advice. That is incredible advice. And I don't know.
Caricature the press had created. And it didn't stop there. In multiple appearances, Bezos has showcased Sanchez as his equal. Not just a partner, but a collaborator in vision and values. Whether they're photographed sailing across the Mediterranean, attending A-list galas, or meeting world leaders, their body language is deliberate. He listens when she talks. He includes her in every public moment, and she, in turn, plays the part of the devoted yet opinionated partner, not shrinking in his shadow, but standing beside him. Friends of the couple have echoed the sentiment. One insider told People that Bezos sees Sanchez as someone who brings warmth
in the world. And the way to get big problems done is you have to work together. We have too many examples in the world of conflict and people using
to his often reserved public persona. She brings him out of his shell, the source said. He's happier, more relaxed, more himself when she's around. But there's more to this than just romance. Bezos isn't just defending his fiancée, he's protecting an investment. In the same way he's meticulously built Amazon, Blue Origin, and the Washington Post, he's now building a legacy that includes Lauren Sánchez. Every time he speaks highly of her, every photo op and joint initiative, it's part of something larger, a transformation of both image and identity. Because if there's one thing Bezos understands better than most...
To the choir right here, we love you. That's amazing.
It just gets better and better.
The two said "I do" in front of famous friends after celebrating
branding. And as critics question Sanchez's past, he's created a present where she's not just his partner. She's his humanizing factor, the warmth to his intellect, the spontaneity to his structure, the woman who, against all odds and opinions, earned his trust. But behind the public adoration, something deeper lingers. Why does he feel the need to defend her so publicly? Why such curated affection in the spotlight? Is it all genuine? Or is it, like everything else in Bezos's world, part of a larger, carefully designed master plan? Because when you strip away the money, the PR, and the private jets...
The weather. It used to be weather, and then it was like to the weather to the right. Yeah, it was a pretty big office.
They did a huge overhaul of the makeup room here
One question still remains. Who is the real Lauren Sánchez? And that answer depends entirely on who you ask next. It's easy to look at Lauren Sánchez and form an opinion. The designer dresses, the yacht vacations, the headlines tying her name to a billion-dollar affair, it all screams high maintenance, high drama, and maybe even high risk. To the outside world, she's the textbook definition of a woman who knows how to play the game. And for many, that's exactly the problem. Because when someone's life looks that glossy, that curated, that perfectly placed next to the richest man on earth, people start to wonder what's real and what's performance. Publicly, Sanchez has often been labeled everything from a
decided, no, you're not getting the job. But look at you now. I don't think that you needed the job.
No. It's somehow you haven't aged a day.
Power chaser to a modern-day Yoko, someone who shows up in a man's life just before things get complicated. And when her relationship with Jeff Bezos went public, those whispers turned into headlines. Suddenly, she wasn't just a news anchor or a former reporter. She was the other woman, the reason behind Bezos's divorce, and for some, the calculated mastermind. But speak to the people in her inner circle, and you'll get a very different picture. Privately, Sanchez is described as warm, fiercely maternal, and obsessively thoughtful. Friends say she's the kind of person who remembers tiny details. Not just birthdays, but things like your dog's name.
He goes, you know, you're an explorer. And I was like, what? He goes, yes. He goes, you're a pilot. You like to see the world.
Your favorite wine, the way your mom takes her tea. She sends handwritten thank you notes. She throws family dinners. And while the world's dissecting her wardrobe choices, she's busy organizing her son's graduation celebration, where ex-partners, new spouses, and even Bezos all gather under one roof. No drama. That kind of harmony doesn't just happen by accident. Her ability to maintain relationships with her exes, particularly Tony Gonzalez and his wife Toby, shows a level of emotional maturity that contradicts her tabloid persona. It's one thing to co-parent peacefully. It's another to invite your ex and his new wife to Thanksgiving and call them your best friends.
In the best version of people, business leaders, people like Jessica Alba has been on, Michael Strahan has been on, he's the only athlete I've had on there.
That's not manipulation. That's intentional kindness. Then there's how she shows up for the people around her. Even Patrick Whitesell, who had every reason to be publicly bitter, has never spoken a negative word about her. And when her life exploded into public scandal, not a single member of her family gave a tell-all or cashed in on the drama. That silence speaks volumes. It suggests loyalty, or maybe fear, depending on who you ask. But this contrast between the glamorous public figure and the grounded private woman creates friction. People struggle to reconcile the version of Sanchez who's lovingly decorating birthday cakes with the version who is secretly seeing Jeff Bezos while still married.
He did the job.
No.
And somehow you haven't aged a day.
First time I did it, I think it was like.
And in that space between perception and reality, her true identity remains elusive. Is she a misunderstood woman navigating powerful circles with grace? Or is she a master strategist who's always one move ahead? Either way, she's in control of the narrative, and she always has been. Because while the public debates her intentions, Lauren Sánchez rarely says anything at all. Her silence isn't passive, it's power. And now, with a wedding on the horizon and the world watching closely, Sanchez may be preparing for the most calculated or most authentic chapter of her life yet. But is this love story a redemption, or just the final move in a much longer game? After years of speculation, controversy, and whispered allegations,
told the Wall Street Journal in 2023 that she's best friends with her ex and his wife. But she admitted to the outlet at the time that it was.
Lauren Sánchez has done something almost no one expected. She secured the heart of Jeff Bezos and the engagement ring that came with it. In 2023, the couple made it official, announcing their plans to marry after nearly 4 years of being the internet's favorite scandal. For some, it felt like the final chapter in a wild saga. But for Sanchez, it may have just been the beginning. Their love story has been dissected by every major outlet, not just because of who Jeff Bezos is, but because of who she is. The former news anchor, the Hollywood insider, the woman who had reportedly shaken the foundation of 2 marriages with one relationship.
I'm a little nervous. I have to tell you, it's so funny. My hand was shaking back there. And
the narrative wasn't subtle. The mistress turned mogul's muse. But Sanchez, as always, stayed silent, smiling through headlines and letting her next move speak louder than any quote ever could. Because here's what many people forget. Sanchez didn't just date Bezos, she changed with him. Together, they've become a team. She's taken a front seat in Bezos' ventures, including Blue Origin. She's been photographed attending business summits, meeting with world leaders, and walking beside him in moments that once would have been reserved for a Mackenzie Scott-type partner. Quiet, intellectual, philanthropic. But Sanchez isn't trying to be Mackenzie. She's rewriting the role entirely. With her background in media, aviation, and business, she's no stranger to navigating elite circles. But the Bezos era has elevated her status to something else entirely, a public figure in her own right. Suddenly, she's not just Bezos's fiancée. She's a woman with influence, presence, and a narrative that's being shaped, not by the tabloids, but by the images she chooses to project. The question now becomes, is this redemption or reinvention? To her critics, the answer is obvious. They see a carefully calculated transformation, a woman who leveraged opportunity, aligned with power, and flipped scandal into status.
A warm welcome to Lauren Sánchez back in the house. Come on, raise that roof.
It's really fun.
They don't see love, they see strategy. But to those who followed her arc more closely, something deeper is unfolding. They see a woman who's weathered brutal public scrutiny, remained unshaken, and still shows up to every family milestone, still bridges exes into holiday dinners, and still inspires the loyalty of one of the most media-protected billionaires alive. That doesn't happen without character. If this is reinvention, it's not born out of manipulation, and it's resilience. If it's redemption, it's hard-earned. Either way, Sanchez isn't looking back. She's planning a wedding on a super yacht, balancing motherhood, and helping Bezos plot the future of humanity's presence in space. And somehow, she's doing all of it while remaining mostly silent. No memoir, no reason.
It was one of my first jobs out of college. I got to travel the world. So I literally went out of the country for
reality show, no public meltdown, just quiet evolution. Because when the headlines fade and the critics move on to their next target, Lauren Sánchez will still be standing, smiling next to the man who risked it all to be with her. But what she becomes next, that's the twist no one's ready for. In a world obsessed with image, reputation, and narrative control, Lauren Sánchez remains an enigma. To some, she's the villain, the woman who disrupted marriages, climbed social ladders, and always seemed to land on her feet. To others, she's a survivor, someone who's navigated love, family, and unforgiving public scrutiny with quiet strength and razor-sharp instincts. But here's what's undeniable. No matter how loud the rumors get, Sánchez never flinches. She doesn't argue, she doesn't explain, she simply moves forward, aligning with billionaires, making power moves, and rewriting her own story with each carefully chosen step. And maybe that's the real reason people can't stop watching, because whether you believe she's finally found the love of her life, or